for a beautiful technology. And she is delivering a talk today. I'm very sure the students will be benefiting out of that. तो बच्चों जितने भी यहाँ बीटेक और एमएससी टेक पीएचडी के बच्चे हैं, मैं बताना चाहूँगा डॉक्टर ईरा वशिष्ठ was a PhD from our department, and she was a wonderful researcher and a wonderful human being because always मेरे गुरु मुझे ये बोलते थे कि if a person is a good human being, everything other than that, like all PhD or career things or financial things, they will come automatically. Provided you do hard work and you should have a very clear and selfless motive. So, with these words, I'm so thankful to Dr. Ira Vashish that she's here to deliver a talk, and very grateful to Dr. Tirath Raj that he could arrange this beautiful talk today. So, with that, I welcome Dr. Ira Vashish.
Thank you so much, sir.
धन्यवाद सर, थैंक यू वेरी मच। सबसे पहले मैं अब अपनी जैव सूचना स्नातक की द्वितीय वर्ष की छात्रा कुमारी विनम्रता को बुलाना चाहता हूं, वो आए और सभी छात्रों से इरा का परिचय करवाएं।
Good morning,
विनम्रता।
everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Today we are having our session on CRISPR-Cas system, which is a powerful tool for crop improvement by our PhD alumna, Dr. Ira Vashish. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
I would like to introduce our alumna. She did her BTech and MTech from MIT University, Noida, after which she completed her PhD in plant molecular biology and transcriptomics from JP University, Wakna Ghat in 2018, where her area of research was the regulation of plant secondary metabolism. She is doing her postdoctoral research from School of Computational Integrative Sciences and School of Biotechnology, JNU. She also worked as an assistant professor in the Department of Biotechnology in St. Xavier's College, Mumbai. Her research is also published in various high-impact journals. Currently, she is working as NPDF Science and Engineering Research Board at the School of Biotechnology, JNU, where her area of research is plant reproductive development. It is great to have you here, ma'am.
Thank you, Vinamrita. Thank you so much for your kind words.
Okay, Ira, so
Shall I
over to
begin,
you
sir?
now. Please go ahead, share your
Yes.
screen, and the stage is with you now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Very good morning to all. I'm currently doing my postdoctoral studies at the School of Biotechnology here at JNU New Delhi. So my current area of research is plant reproductive development. Our lab basically focuses on plant physiology. So currently, I'm looking at the female reproductive development from the lens of the transcriptome-based studies, where we are studying the anther and the ovary system and how it is manifesting itself in the plant itself in the natural system, and how we can utilize the basic understanding or the physiology of these reproductive organs for actually benefiting genetic engineering approaches. So we are also trying to venture into the development of drought resistant plants by incorporation of the outcomes of this project as well. So CRISPR-Cas actually is a technique which I'm currently putting my hands on for my next project, where I would be utilizing it for actually doing a knockdown for certain genes which we have shortlisted in our previous studies. So today what I am going to do is we are going to take a walk through the technique, because there are certain undergrad students as well. So we are going to talk about the technique as such, how it is actually present and in the natural system, how we utilize it, and how we can actually take its essence and put it inside the strategies which we design for the crop improvement. Okay, so let me start my presentation. So is my presentation visible?
No, earlier it was visible, Ira, but now it's coming. Yeah,
Now it's
now
coming.
it's fine. Make it full screen mode and
Yes,
then
sir.
you can start.
Okay. Okay. So before talking about CRISPR as such, I'm sure that you all must be aware about what gene editing tools have been. So across so many years, these techniques have evolved. Gene editing actually has been a mainstream part of research because we have always been intrigued by how in the genome the genes actually start their processing, starting from their presence in the DNA and how it manifests itself in the messenger RNAs and finally turning into proteins. So scientists have always been wanting to manipulate the gene expression for their advantage or even for the understanding of their function. The main strategy that has been utilized is gene knockouts, in which you actually destroy the function of a gene based or either its presence in the DNA or when it is in the form of RNA, and thus the protein is actually not functional. That is how we come to know that this gene was actually responsible for this protein. So gene knockout has actually been quite popular with researchers, and techniques like gene silencing and through restriction endonucleases, these have been many researches have happened. So particularly when we talk about precise gene editing or targeting the genes specifically in a specific region in the genome, there have been main four popular techniques, which are utilizing meganucleases, zinc finger nucleases called ZFNs, the talons or transcription activator like elements. Then the one is CRISPR-Cas. Okay, so when we talk about how these have progressed, so there are certain disadvantages associated with meganucleases, zinc finger nucleases, and talons, which were, the limitations were countered in case of CRISPR-Cas9 and has emerged as a better technique. Although all these techniques follow a basic common pattern of expression in which they actually select their target in the genome, and when the target is selected, they have the endonuclease domains inside them. These endonucleases tend to cut or produce double-stranded breaks inside the genome. And as we are all aware that the genome is a very beautiful machinery, and when a cut like a double strand break happens in the genome, the machinery tends to repair it. So there are two basic mechanisms which are utilized, that is the NHEJ, the non-homologous end joining, in which there are random insertions, deletions, this one. Random insertions or deletions actually happen to repair it. There is a cut here, and when the cut is to be repaired, there are certain insertions or deletions that happen that tend to tape it together to join it and form an intact piece of DNA. On the other hand, we have another basic mechanism which is called homology directed repair. In this technique, however, there is a requirement of a template in which is actually
Ira, sorry to interrupt you. Are you forwarding your slides? Because we can see now we can see the second one. Okay. You can make even the full screen mode if required.
Sir, I was in full screen, but was the slide not visible?
No, only first slide was visible.
Oh,
But yeah, now we can see this gene editing tool slide. You are on this one?
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, go ahead.
Should I go ahead and explain again, sir?
No, it's okay.
Okay. So I will just talk about this then. So as I was talking about, I'm sorry for the glitch. So there is the non-homologous end joining, in which there are random insertions or deletions happening to repair this double-stranded break. And there is another mechanism which is called homology directed repair, in which the repair happens, but it is not random. It is actually in the guidance of a particular template that we provide. And this particular mechanism of repair is actually quite accurate, and we can regulate the type of insertion or deletion that we want to have, because this repair is going to happen in the presence of the template that we provide. So all these gene editing tools work by the same mechanism. However, CRISPR-Cas9 has emerged as a better tool in comparison to other tools which have been utilized. Why this happened is uh, mainly because of the precision that it is going to give to the researchers. Sir, is the next slide visible?
No. Now we are on gene editing tool slide.
I think, sir,
Now it's there.
I think the full screen mode is not working fine in my PC maybe.
Okay, you can go manually like this.
If yes, sir, if this works fine, I can zoom the slide so that
Yeah, now it's okay.
yes, sir. I think in this way we will be able to. So the students can let me know if anything is not visible. Yeah, thank you. The CRISPR-Cas has emerged as a preferred tool for genome engineering because of the precision property that it provides. So I can be quite specific to the range of a single nucleotide when it comes to the gene editing, which is to be done with my CRISPR-Cas technique. Okay. And all these techniques like meganucleases, talons, and ZFNs, what they were doing is, one, they are actually having a very large specific area or number of nucleotides which were as their targets, specifically in case of meganucleases, that was quite large. So it limits my capability of selecting a target. So larger my target is, it is more difficult to design find that in my genome. So if my target is a smaller molecule, then obviously the specificity might get compromised. But if I'm able to control it through various techniques, which I'm going to explain later, it is the CRISPR-Cas gives me a larger ease of design in comparison to other techniques which were being used. Now, adaptability, if I'm concerned about the adaptability into different organisms, so CRISPR-Cas9 has proved its worth in all the organisms ranging from prokaryotic systems to even humans, in which the research is quite massively happening nowadays. This CRISPR-Cas system is quite adaptable to different organisms. Now, another major thing that has given advantage to CRISPR-Cas is it is very easy to multiplex or scale. Multiplexing means that there are certain genes when we are planning any genetic engineering experiment. My main idea is that I want to target a particular trait. So many times, especially in case of plants, single traits are not generally governed by a single gene. So what happens is there are, especially in case of traits like QTLs, which are called quantitative trait loci. So in those situations, there is one gene which is actually in combination with several other genes that controls a trait. So when I am going to edit that trait, I will have to edit all those genes little by little. So this CRISPR-Cas technique gives me a lot of advantage in that. So it is very easy to target multiple genes using this system, and very efficiently, and the results are quite good in comparison to other techniques. So this is how this CRISPR-Cas has emerged as a better tool than other genome editing tools. So let's see how it actually does it. So the CRISPR-Cas9 system, if we talk about CRISPR is the clustered, regularly interspaced, short palindromic repeats. So these are actually, there are certain repeats which are present. They were found actually in a prokaryotic system. So these repeats actually are utilized for formation of my CRISPR assembly, which is going to target a particular area in the genome. Okay. So in addition to these repeats or a targeting region, I have a particular enzyme which is called the Cas9. Now, there are certain other enzymes also. Cas is known for the CRISPR associated system. Now, Cas9 is the most popular one which is being used, and it was in fact the first one and the most well characterized endonuclease attached to the CRISPR-Cas systems. Now, this Cas is attached to a particular guide RNA. Now, this guide RNA is composed of two main parts. One is a spacer. The spacer is the one which is going to have my target sequence, which it is going to look for in the genome. In addition to this spacer, it needs a scaffold. This scaffold is actually going to hold my Cas9, and when they are together, they form a Cas9 gRNA or the guide RNA complex. And this complex is the active assembly which is going to go and look for a particular target in the genome. And when it finds it, it is going to attach there and cause a double-stranded break. So let's just have a look in the natural system how this actually happens. So this is called an adaptive immune system. So scientists in late 1980s, when they were studying the prokaryotic immune systems, they found out, especially in case of Streptococcus pyogenes, this prokaryote, this is actually a very well characterized genome it has. So in Streptococcus pyogenes, they found that in the genome, there are certain repeats that they could observe, which are stacked together, but they are interspersed with certain spacer regions. These spacer regions, the colored ones. So they observed that these regions are actually present, and this is a kind of an array. Array is actually an assembly of repeating units, so they could observe this kind of a peculiar assembly happening in the genome of Streptococcus pyogenes. So on close observation, they realized that actually these spacers were not belonging to the genome of the bacteria itself. However, they belong to the nucleic acid material of the viruses. So why would bacteria harbor certain regions of the virus in its genome? So this is quite intriguing for them. And then they found out that actually when a particular viral system affects a bacteria, so after affecting it, what happens is once it infects it, sometimes the bacteria doesn't get killed. But the next time when the same virus attacks the bacteria is actually capable of countering the attack and in fact killing that virus. So how is this happening? This is happening because of these unique sequences and this array which is called a CRISPR array. So what happens inside the CRISPR array is, if you closely look at this array, this is a locus. As you see in case of prokaryotes, the gene functional unit appears something like this. So it will have a particular section called which encodes for tracer RNA. There is a gene encoding for Cas9 or the endonuclease, and there are certain repeats. So this tracer RNA after transcription forms this kind of an assembly. The Cas9 becomes a functional protein, and these spacer regions are actually processed through RNA polymerases, and this pre-CR RNA or the pre-CRISPR cRNA is actually transcribed from this region. After further processing, this is cut into smaller pieces, and these actually have target of the viral genome in itself. So these go to the virus into that genome, and these attach to it. So this whole assembly, like the one that I showed you in the previous slide, this assembly gets on like a ride on the viral genome or RNA, and then it goes there, locates these particular spacer regions, and they would obviously be complementary to the viral nucleic acid, and it attaches there and it causes a double strand break. So when there is a double strand break happening at so many regions inside the viral machinery goes off, and it is capable of actually killing the virus. So this prokaryotic immune system is called an adaptive immune system because it actually calls for a first infection first, and then in the second infection it is capable of countering it. So it's a kind of acquired immune system. So we as researchers are utilizing this this prokaryotic immune system to our advantage. So this all is happening in the prokaryotic system. It has been happening, and several segregated groups were looking at different parts. Some persons were looking at the guide RNA part, some people were looking at the CRISPR system, some at the CRISPR array parts. Am I audible and the slide is clear, sir?
Yes.
Okay. So, in 2011, two scientists called Emmanuel Charpentier and Jennifer Doudna, they actually met at a conference, and they discussed their ideas about how they were both intrigued by this mysterious molecule of CRISPR-Cas9 system and how it actually can be utilized for gene editing. So after years of research and demonstrating several experiments in vitro, they could actually take this experiment out of the prokaryotic system, all the components, and they were able to design a molecule which now we call as a single guide RNA, the one that I showed in this. This Cas9 gRNA complex doesn't actually occur in the natural system. In the natural system, I showed you, it is a kind of an array in the prokaryotic system. They were able to design this assembly, and this assembly has found immense application across the organisms, in which they actually took it out in a vial which can be maneuvered accordingly, according to my experiment, my gene of interest, and you just have to alter this spacer region to guide molecule, this whole complex, to any region, and it can cause the edit. So they shared the Nobel Prize for the biochemistry in 2020, and since then several research papers are pouring in, especially in 2020-21. If you look at just the plant systems, you will find at least 10 to 20 research or review articles. In fact, review articles, research articles are many. So much of activities happening. So if we see CRISPR in action, we will see that it has a guide RNA. As I told you, this guide RNA is composed of a CRISPR RNA. This is the CRISPR RNA, and it has a genomic target for Cas9. This tracer RNA, it is this molecule. This tracer RNA is going to act as a scaffold for this large portion called my Cas9, the blue one. This whole assembly mounts on the genome of the organism of interest. So it keeps on scanning, and it looks for a particular sequence that is called PAM. This is called protospacer adjacent motif. So as I talked about the spacer region, which is going to be the target, there's a particular marker kind of a thing present in the genome, which is called a protospacer adjacent motif. It's a small oligonucleotide, which is 3 to 4 or sometimes 6 nucleotides. This assembly actually goes on looking for this PAM. Once this PAM is encountered, it mounts itself on the genome. So ideally, I need to have my gene of interest and a particular PAM located around. If I am able to locate this PAM, only then my assembly mounts on it. So this makes it quite specific, because even if the target might be present at several locations, the PAM might not be available everywhere. So I'm able to localize my assembly to a particular target in the genome. So once this assembly mounts on the genome, it locks itself there so that it doesn't fall off while in activity. And this Cas9 is actually containing 2 domains which are capable of causing a double strand break. And once this break happens, obviously the HDR and NHEJ comes into play, and it causes gene editing. So when I talk about Cas9 and its variants, they have 2 endonuclease domains. One is N-terminal RUBC-like domain, and one is an HNH-like domain. So these both act on opposite strands. HNH actually acts on the complementary strand, and RUBC-like nucleus domain acts on the opposite strand, and they both bring a cut. And the genomic target that we are designing in our guide RNA can be any approximately 20 nucleotide DNA sequence. And while designing it, we have to be quite sure. Actually, the whole process of getting an efficient and specific system is selection of that particular sequence actually. So it has to be unique, compared to the rest of the genome, and it needs to be present immediately upstream of a protospacer adjacent motif, the PAM motif that I talked about. So mostly in case of Cas9, it needs to be present, the sequence needs to be present upstream. There are other variants of Cas in which they can be present downstream also, but in the most popular system, that is Cas9, it is to be present upstream of a PAM. So this region is actually a very short nucleotide sequence, 2 to 6 base pair, and once this is found, it mounts and it causes the gene editing. So since this Cas9 got discovered, this was identified in Streptococcus pyogenes, so it is called SP Cas9. In that, the PAM is actually NGG. N can be any nucleotide, but it needs to have GG along. But this was actually, sometimes it gets very difficult to find this particular sequence adjacent to your gene of interest. So researchers started pouring in which they found out other PAMs also. So here are a list of some other PAMs in other prokaryotic systems, which are being utilized for identifying your gene of interest, and they have been quite successful. Although SP-Cas9 still remains the most preferred system because of its well characterization, but these are also being experimented with nowadays for increasing the applicability of the system. So this is how this is another explanation of how it causes insertions and deletions. So once my guide RNA in Cas9, it assembles itself, it causes double strand break. So in case of NHEJ, this particular gene edit that happened, in case of my wild type, this particular region is going to join just like that. But once I create a cut, there can be an insertion. So these two nucleotides can get added into my genome. And because of this, sometimes a frame shift happens. So once a frame shift happens, the whole protein becomes dysfunction, or it doesn't form only. Similar is the case when there can be a deletion. So a whole region can get cut out. The frame shift, in case of frame shift, that can be caused by either these, or sometimes the whole a major section goes away, or the major section gets inserted, and there's a frame shift happening, which leads to a non-function or the protein not being made. So this whole mechanism, the NHEJ, is actually the most observed mechanism when it comes to Cas9, because this is the natural mechanism. The better or the more precise way would be the homology directed repair. However, this technique is being experimented and needs a lot of research nowadays, because it lacks a little bit of efficiency. So when I'm talking about efficiency, I'm talking about the transformation efficiency as well as the efficiency in terms of the number of knockouts that we generate. So in this case, we in addition to this assembly, we are adding a template which is going to cause precise repair mechanism, and this precise edit is followed by the homology directed repair. So the best idea would be to go through the homology directed repair, but the transformation and the its appearance in the form of phenotype is still being researched upon. So this technique has mainly been used for knockout. However, in addition to knockout, there are other mechanisms also, like this Cas9 based assembly. Now, Cas9 can actually, researchers have made another kind of an endonuclease called the dead Cas9. So in dead Cas9, what happens is I dismantle the endonuclease domains of it. So when I am dismantling the endonuclease domain of it, it forms the assembly. It targets a particular region because of the guide RNA, and it takes my, whatever I attach to this assembly, it takes it along. So I take my dead Cas9 and I can attach fluorescence marker to it, like a GFP. So when this is going to a particular target of the genome, it fluoresces. So sometimes I'm interested in finding out that this particular gene is present in how many chromosomes, or a chromosomal localization study, or a subcellular localization study. So in those cases, I can actually target my Cas9 assembly that way, that it doesn't cut anywhere, but it just fluoresces and it localizes and shows me where my particular gene is present. Sometimes this can also be utilized for gene activation. When I'm playing with the promoter regions of a particular gene, the CRISPR-based activation can happen. And similarly, I can attach activators or the repressor proteins to my dead Cas9, and this can actually give me a positive or negative regulation for my particular gene, and not just make a cut. And talking about the precision with which it happens, there are certain enzymes which can be attached to it, like a deaminase enzyme. So when this particular enzyme is attached to my Cas9 assembly, this is capable of making a precise cut of one nucleotide. This change happens. So this TA, which was originally present in my genome, this changes to inosine, and this becomes a CG. So from my A to T, it becomes a CG because of the Cas9 assembly. So this precise one nucleotide change can actually be beneficial for human diseases, especially where one nucleotide change actually causes the whole problem. For example, sickle cell anemia. In that case, a similar case happens. So this can be, immensely utilized in those studies are under progress. So we hope to see that very soon. So I'm actually progressing in the direction of gene editing in plants. So the possibilities are immense. We can utilize this gene editing technique in abiotic stress, in large-scale manufacture of byproducts and secondary metabolites, in countering the abiotic stress. The plant development and yield is a major emphatic property, because the researchers say that by 2060, the population is going to be 9.6 billion, and we need to upscale our productivity by almost 60%. So the breeding approaches that we are following, they are mainstream, but they are not going to take the production up by 60%. So techniques like these will be capable of getting a better productivity by countering the stress, as well as by enhancing the yield. So mainly when the CRISPR systems are utilized in crop improvement, if this is my wild crop, so I can target a particular domestication gene. Like if I talk about tomato, I can increase the fruit size or the number of branches that can be enhanced in my the generation of plants that are got through my CRISPR edited plants. Similarly, in case of cereal crops, I can have an increased panicle size. The internodes can be increased, and the productivity or the yield can be increased. So I just have to look for the precise genes that are responsible for giving me this particular trait, and I can do an editing, the CRISPR editing, to generate that. Another gene is another mechanism is I can target my chromosomal genes by multiplexing. Now, multiplexing, as I talked about previously, also that multiple genes can be targeted together. So when I target multiple genes through multiplex CRISPR, they are capable of giving me a phenotype which is not having the male counterpart, or the male sterile plants, which is quite a sought after trait, because it leads to my double haploid formation, and haploids are actually responsible for pure traits and for enhancing the yield in field. Then in addition to generation of double haploids, I can also generate hybrids, in which I can maneuver with the fertilization genes, and then multiple genes can be changed in the chromosome to make this process of fertilization can be converted into like a somatoembryogenetic state, in which large scale multiplication can be done without fertilization happening. So that would be relatively much faster, and I will be able to control the traits that are going to come in my next generation. So that would lead to a clonal hybrid embryo, and which would be high vigor. So sometimes I can just insert certain genes. This is called synthetic biology, in which certain genes can be inserted to generate synthetic devices or synthetic genes which were previously not present in the crops. Although this is like generation of transgenics, so not quite encouraged, but in case of generation of edible vaccines, this can be a very preferred way of doing that. So when I'm talking about how this CRISPR-Cas system actually enters into the plant system and how it works, so there are several mechanisms. I hope the slide is clear. Is the slide readable, sir?
Yeah, it's okay. Some text is small, but
I can just zoom in on every picture then.
okay, yeah.
This would be better. So the first mechanism would be the direct CRISPR-Cas delivery. So I told you all about the guide RNA and Cas9 assembly. So this actually needs to be transformed into a particular organism. So Cas9 is an endonuclease and it needs its own promoter to work. And similarly, there is a guide RNA which needs its own promoter. Now the promoter along with these constructs need to be put into a system, and the system needs to go and transform my organism. Okay, so this can happen through agrobacterium. Mediated transformation still remains the most popular and efficient way of transforming my plant cells. So this assembly harboring my guide RNA and my CRISPR assembly is loaded into either of these. This can be an agrobacterium mediated TI plasmid based system, or I can introduce nanoparticles or coat this milieu over the nanoparticles, and I can also incorporate the ballistic system. Protoplast cultures in which PEG can be used, that can be utilized, or the plant viruses, which we term as engineered viral systems, which can be, we can package our whole assembly inside a viral system, and this virus can infect my plant cell and take this whole assembly inside the plant system. So this is how this can actually transfect my system. So in plants, the main problem is you have to surpass the cell wall, which is a quite rigid part of the plant cell. So these techniques are generally being used. Ballistic has the same disadvantages as it has in other any other transformation system involved, that uh, it causes a big injury to the cell, but still it's a efficient way of transforming such calcitrant plants in which the other transformation procedures are not quite successful. Another major upcoming technique that has emerged is we generate plants in which first we express just the Cas9. So this Cas9 overexpressing plants, when they are in their culture or they are blooming, we take out the meristematic tissue and we culture it again. And this in this meristem culture, we actually introduce our agrobacterium based plasmid, in which there is a guide RNA. So why not together? Because when we are talking about these techniques, they need to be together and packaged. Now Cas9 is a very big molecule in itself, and the sgRNA is a very big molecule in itself. So in a way, if we could separate these two and then join them together in vitro or in planta, they have also turned out to be efficient transformation systems. So now we inject agrobacterium loaded with my guide RNA in a system which already has Cas9. So I'm able to generate de novo meristems and genome modified plants. Uh, Another system is virus introduced. Virus introduced heritable gene editing. In this, also I need a Cas expressing or Cas overexpressing plant. But in case of this, my whole assembly, instead of it happening in agrobacterium tumefaciens, it happens inside a viral system. And then viral system is actually put inside the agrobacterium mediated transfer, the infiltration or the agro-infiltration happens. And then when the seeds come from these gene edited plants, they are actually heritable. So this particular mechanism we follow when we are not checking the transient expression, but we do want a heritable change which can be passed on to the generations. So this particular method of gene delivery is actually heritable. Another method of generating haploids is I take an egg cell, and there's a sperm cell from the of the haploid inducer. I need to generate haploids. So when they fertilize, I put my gene editing tool inside the sperm of my haploid inducer. So in these sperms, I have a CRISPR-Cas loci. So when this gets fertilized, they obviously will join together in the zygote. So in this case, the genome editing happens in such way that during the fertilization, the Cas genes are going to get transferred. The gene edit happens, like you can see here. However, this particular genes which were transferred from the sperm cell of the haploid inducer, they actually get destroyed. So once my edit happens, that stays, but the CRISPR-Cas loci that I had placed from outside, the genes that I had placed, they actually tend to get destroyed. So this gives me a edited haploid also, and the male, it's a male sterile phenotype with the male genotype completely gone. So scientists are actually saying that this can be an efficient way of incorporating the genes from the sperm donor and not letting it pass on or generating the haploids at the same time. So it's quite an efficient system that is coming up. Another major type of genome editing that is happening nowadays is cis engineering, in which we play with the cis regions of my genome or the promoter regions of my genes. So if you talk about a few genes like this cleveta gene, when we see its activity in the plants like tomato, so it is responsible for a high vigor and a large fruit size. So I can actually put activators and target the promoter region of my cleveta gene. And when all of them are many single guide RNAs are put together in a multiplex CRISPR, all of them together, they generate this large fruit size. So this playing with the cis region or the promoter region of cleveta actually tends to result in this. In fact, another mechanism of NOT activation, sometimes what I can do is I can disrupt a certain region of my cis regulatory elements. There is an example of A-gammas gene that is present in the CRE region of the WS gene or the Wistal gene. So what happens is this A-gammas gene is disrupted, which leads to upregulation of this gene and tends to give me a large fruit size. In the same.
Ira, sorry to interrupt you, but if we can finish in next 10 minutes, okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is almost finished, sir. Then the next technique would be, if I'm disrupting this, sometimes what I can do is I can just delete a particular region. So these there are certain transporters which are called the sweet transporters. So these transporters are actually sugar transporters, and they are attached to several phenotypes. They're attached to fertility of the plant also. They're attached to stress tolerance also, and they are involved in sugar transport as well. So there are certain regions called tail regions which are present in the promoter regions. So this particular region is actually deleted through CRISPR-Cas, and I am able to, because of the deletion, this OS sweet or the rice sweet region, this actually gives a low expression. Because of this low expression, I am capable of getting a resistant variety to a viral infection. Now, when I am doing this CRE deletion, I can do it through gene silencing also, through other mechanisms also. But I was not able to make a precise cut in this particular region, which was giving me a a resistant phenotype, but it was tending to be sterile because of the lack of precision in the deletion. But when I do it through CRISPR-Cas, I am able to get a resistant phenotype along with it having a fertile genotype and phenotype together. So another mechanism would be promoter insertion. So in my promoter region itself, I can insert an area which can enhance its activity. So if this is actually done by HDR mechanism. So I put my template DNA and it gets inserted inside the promoter region. So when they are all together, it leads to the high expression of a gene. And sometimes I can just take this particular region out and swap it with another region of my interest. This can lead to the high expression also. So these all techniques are quite beneficial in giving me the best from my crop improvement strategies. There are certain challenges that are there in crop improvement programs that we are doing. So obviously, as I told you, the process of regeneration. So once I am done with the transformation strategy, even if the transformation happens, that plant should be capable of surviving in tissue culture in vitro experiment, as well as it needs to survive in the field as well. So these experiments need a little standardization. We are not exactly there yet. We are still to minimize the off-target effects and to be even more precise, the optimal nucleases, it means sometimes the PAM region of SP-Cas9 is not enough. So all the research is happening for finding out novel optimal nucleases, which are, I can customize to my need. The ability of nucleases to generate homozygosity or heterozygosity is something that I need to control, especially when I am dealing with polyploid crops. It needs to be assessed and applied accordingly. The packaging and delivery is also one thing to increase the transformation efficiency because of the size. And one approach that has been used is for increasing the specificity of Cas9 nuclease. So the regular wild type SP-Cas9 actually causes a double-stranded break, but I can make a nuclease dead Cas9, the dead Cas9 that I talked about. In that case, I can play with just one region. We had two regions for the nuclease to cause a double-stranded break. One was RUVC and one was HNH. So in one Cas9, I can dismantle one of the domains. So it will not cause a double-stranded break. It will cause only a single-stranded break. So in this situation, I can target two regions which are in the vicinity and put my assembly together with another enzyme, that is FOC1. This also targets a particular region, but FOC1 has an interesting property that FOC1 is going to function as an endonuclease. This D-Cas9 is anyways dead. It is just for targeting. FOC1 has an important property that it is going to make a cut only when it becomes a dimer. So I will have to put two regions or two assemblies together in vicinity, and when they form a dimer, they are going to make single cuts on both sides, thereby causing a double-stranded break. But then they will have to have two target regions, and I can falter with one target on off target, but I cannot have two off targets and still this happening. So this is quite an interesting way of increasing the specificity. And sometimes what I can do is I can just play with one of the endonuclease domains so that it makes one cut only. So I will have two targets where the endonuclease, both of them are not active, only one of them is active. So one cuts on my complementary target and the other one acts on the opposite strand. So the mechanism remains the same, but this Cas9 is the one which is active because it is not dead. It just has one endonuclease alive. So this is one way of increasing the specificity. Rest, this research is still happening, and I'm sure we will soon have all many high vigor crops coming in, and once we counter all the challenges, we will have a good generation of high vigor plants coming in this way. So thank you. I'm ready to take questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Ira. I think we just had a crash course on CRISPR-Cas9 system. The presentation was beautiful, flawless, and really good. I hope students also enjoyed along with me and sir.
Yeah,
So,
sure.
Thank you, sir.
So
Dr.
if
Rajkumar
anybody
is having a question.
Dr. Rajkumar is asking one query, Ira.
Yes, sir.
Like, how about plants modified through CRISPR genome editing? ethically, do they come under the same category as GM crops?
Actually, there is a mechanism called the RNP delivery, in which we don't introduce any transgene, because when we talk about agrobacterium mediated gene transfer, sometimes the concern is that a transgene is being